Welcome everyone to the first in our third and now fall 2020 season of webinars on remote interpreting, hosted by Cross Cultural Communications. I am Marjorie Bancroft, the director and founder of Cross Cultural Communications, and I have the special delight and honor of launching this season with a webinar by the lady who brings you branding for interpreters in the United States, and it's Mireia Perez, who is going to speak about your personal brand. And she's speaking to interpreters and of course the people who love and work with interpreters. We will be standing by to assist her. If you would like to see your presenter or both presenters, because I will be popping in now and possibly at the end, you can use gallery view. We are offering, as you know, CEUs for this webinar, but only for people who attend the webinar live. I would now like to begin by introducing you first to CCC and Blue Horizon, and then our presenter. So Cross Cultural Communications, we're the only national training agency for community and medical interpreting. And Blue Horizon is our online training platform. And Blue Horizon is hosting this series on remote interpreting. It began because of COVID. These are free webinars. You can find them all on our website, and Andrew will be posting that link periodically. So if you like this webinar, you can go back and see all of our previous webinars at no cost. We just can't give you CUs for viewing the past ones. And Andrew Hall, thank you in advance for all the kind assistance that you provide us. Mireia Perez is someone I've had the pleasure of watching present in person and known for, gosh, I think 3 years now. And she is a professional interpreter, certified medical interpreter, working primarily as a K-12 school district interpreter and translator in California, which is a hotbed of professionalization of interpreters and translators in education. She has a master's in science in communications, which is one of the things that gives her an edge in this topic of branding. And she has also recently, this is really exciting, in February 2020, Mireia launched the Brand the Interpreter podcast. Look it up, a platform where language professionals tell their stories. So we look forward very much to this presentation. I myself can't wait to see it. Please use chat if you have questions for CCC or comments in general, and change the default if you want other people to see it from just all panelists to everyone, to all and panelists. And then if you have a question for Mireia for the question and answer period, don't write your question in chat, please. Go ahead to Q&A, open up Q&A and write your question there. I will be monitoring questions and feeding Mireia, asking Mireia these questions at the end. By the way, as we continue this third series, which is called Special Topics in Remote Interpreting, we are curious if there is a presenter. We're looking for a presenter on how to prepare for the most common medical encounters in remote interpreting. Some of the differences about working in a call center as a remote interpreter versus working as a freelance remote interpreter, and increasing your business as a freelancer. Now, without further ado, I would like to pass the baton over to Mireia. I am going to disappear, but I will be here in the background and helping Andrew to answer questions that you may have. It's all yours, Mireia. Have fun.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Marjorie. I really appreciate that. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen now. So let's say take a few seconds here to make sure that I am sharing the correct screen and that you all can see it. So if maybe I can get an okay from you, Marjorie, that you can see the screen.
Perfectly. I had to unmute myself, sorry.
Wonderful. Well, let's go ahead and get started. Thank you so very much, everyone that has joined us. I'm super excited to be here today. Today's topic is all about you and how you can create a personal brand with all of the tools that you currently have. So it is an absolute privilege and a pleasure to be joining you here today, and I'm excited to get started. So let's dive right on in. Indeed, a little bit of background, just like Marjorie just shared. For the past 8 years, I have been devoting my efforts to branding the role of the interpreter, specifically in my K through 12 school district in California. I do hold a master's in communication with an emphasis in strategic communication management. Such a great program, Purdue University. And I did begin my interpreting journey as a certified medical interpreter through MBCMI. And just as Marjorie just mentioned, my most recent endeavor materialized in February of this year, where I began the Brand the Interpreter podcast. So if you've not had the opportunity to listen to the wonderful guests on the show, please look for it on your favorite podcast platform. Just search up Brand the Interpreter, and that was a quick plug-in. And now for the real reason you're here. Your personal brand. Today's topic will cover 3 different areas of focus that you can begin to implement today and be on your way to creating your own personal brand. We're going to talk about the topic about brand identity, about being unique, about gathering everything that makes you you and expanding it to create a personal brand. We'll talk about how to create a campaign that tells your story, delivering consistent communication specifically designed for your target audience. And then we'll also talk about building community. That's right. Creating a personal brand is not a one-man show. So we're going to talk about how working in collaboration with others helps you in your personal branding efforts. But first, what makes a brand a brand? Branding can be confused with marketing and PR. But if we think about marketing and PR as the structure, then branding is the foundation. So when you think about a brand, what is the first thing that comes to mind? And right now, I'd love for you to please share in the chat, what's the first thing that comes to mind when you think about brand? Feel free to put your responses in the chat box, and I'll allow some opportunity just, for some of those quick responses, if you will, please. Marjorie, do we have anything that is being added to the chat box? Any responses?
We do. I was answering a message, unfortunately. I apologize for the distraction. So what sets you apart? An image? They're coming in so fast, I can't read them. Trust, professionalism, something that is well known, a logo, catchy name, recognizable. Apple, your professionalism. Love that one. Uniqueness, the name of a product or service offered, a uniqueness you're known for, something that represents you. Logo and reputation, difference, identifier. This is a brilliant collection. Another one about the unique service or unique seems to be coming up several times. Identification of your service, what makes you special or stands out. These are also recurring themes, your specialties, your confidence, as well as profession. Complete concept. And it just goes on and on. We've got hundreds here. So that gives you at least a representative taste, Mireya.
Yes, thank you. I appreciate everyone's contribution. All great responses, by the way. So now that we have an idea of what a brand represents, I'm going to show you a couple of images in the next couple of slides. And I'd like for you to add in the chat box what your first impression is as soon as you see them. So again, this impression can be your identifying the image and what it is associated with. Anything else that comes to mind when you see the image? Again, what does the image represent for you? Feel free to add your responses in the chat box, please.
Starbucks, coffee, quality, what I'm drinking now, latte, cream, world domination, coffee and scones, excellent coffee, bad coffee. Coffee is definitely the winner here. Reliability, recognizing the source. Expensive has come up a few times. Bad coffee has come up more than once. Welcoming environment. Dollars, yes, a ripoff. Interesting.
Thank
So
you.
positive, negative, coffee being the winner in terms of sheer frequency, but it's obviously got very personal as well as general associations, Mireia. Very
Exactly.
personal, and that's where a lot of the positive and negative comes in. And one person is writing mixed feelings. Queen of the coffee market, mystical image, first
Queen.
impression, pumpkin spice.
Pumpkin spice, yes. That's
Bustelo is
coming up.
better. Somebody's fighting for their favorite brand. Recognizable exploitation, again, so you have these
Mm.
associations from world domination to exploitation coming in, despite some of their other branding.
Thank you. Thank you,
Intriguing.
Marjorie. Those are all great descriptors. So it seems like the responses are slowing down now. Let's move on to the next image. And again, the first thing that comes to mind. What responses are we seeing here, Marjorie? Well, since I can't seem to see your responses, guys, and if you are out there putting some
I was
information.
speaking while muted.
Oh,
I was. This is completely my fault. Sports is coming up often. The logo, I'm sorry, the slogan, which I won't name, but sports and shoes. Again, some comments as we saw for Starbucks about not fair trade, and expense. So we're seeing some of the same responses we saw for Starbucks. Others are associated besides sports with like speed and clothing. And hyped, and some, one person actually wrote check mark and noted that there might be a connotation of approved or approval.
mm.
um, but the name brand Nike, and shoes are by far, and sports, those would be the most common, and then every variation you can imagine after that, from
Thank you,
simplicity to
Marjorie.
victory.
And those are all excellent responses as well. Again, what we're trying to look at here is what we are identifying these images with. And I'd like for you to consider this. Do either of these logos give you any hint of what the product or the service is? So in other words, does the visual representation give you an indication of what it is that they are selling or providing? And the answer is, well, no, not really, right? So if we look back at our logo of Starbucks, is it a cup of coffee or a cocoa bean, or the same thing for the Nike? You see, brands stand out when they are consistent, when they make promises that they can keep, and they deliver on that promise every time a consumer encounters the brand. This creates a sense of trust between the product and the consumer, or the client, or the audience, or whatever you call, however you'd like to identify the receiving end. Let's consider, for example, the slogan for Folgers. And for those of you that aren't familiar with this brand, Folgers is a coffee brand, another coffee brand. So I'd like to kind of talk a little bit about what that slogan is. Does anyone remember what the slogan for Folgers is? If you remember that little jingle, please add it to the chat box. And Marjorie, if you could just read it off if you see it on in the chat box, please.
And I will, and chat box, not Q&A, please. And I did remember to unmute myself this time. Oh goodness. Yep, it's going too fast for me to even read it. Good to the last drop, Folgers in your cup. Good to the last drop is coming up. And best cup of coffee, mountain and sunshine. So there's different ones.
Ah, okay.
Here it is. The best part of waking up is Folgers in your cup.
Who
Is
was
that the one you
that?
were looking
Who
for?
was the winner then, that one?
There's
Yes.
at least two winners, or three. It looks like
Beautiful.
this. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Marjorie. Absolutely. That's the slogan I was looking for. The best part of waking up is Folgers in your cup. Now, that jingle was created back in 1984. Yet we can still remember verbatim the words and the tune, because I bet that the person that were, or the people that were typing it were singing it as well as they were probably typing it. And even though it's been over 35 years, that's brand identity. And in a sense, that's brand loyalty. And once a consumer associates to the brand, it's very difficult to disassociate the brand from it. So take, for example, this Nike logo, which, by the way, I'm only using it here for educational purposes. The slogan there, if anyone remembers, or what the tagline is for them, is "Just do it." Right? I think for the most part, when we see this logo, we can identify the "Just do it" slogan. That slogan or tagline was created in 1988. But did you know that around 1997, they tried to change it to "I can"? So try imagining that for a moment. Does that come easy to associate this logo with the tagline "I can"? Chances are you can't, because the logo is so connected to its tagline. So this brand has created brand followers. They associate a specific product or a service with the brand. Okay, so what does this have to do with personal branding? Great question. When we think about personal branding, Jeff Bezos says that your brand is what other people say about you when you're not in the room. And so what are we doing for our own personal brand? Or what can we be doing in order to help create our own narratives, in order to help establish some sort of control about who we are as language professionals? Now, I'd like you to consider something. When someone thinks about you, what is the first thing you'd like for them to think about? In other words, what would you like others to think about when they hear or see your name? Again, feel free to add your responses in the chat box. And if Marjorie, if you could just help me just name off a couple, 2 or 3, that'd be wonderful.
Reliable, professionalism. Professionalism keeps coming back. Quality, trustworthy, honest. Yeah.
Wonderful.
Professional
Thank
and reliable. These are the recurrent ones. And well done job.
you.
Sincerity.
Beautiful. So you're probably wondering, why my name, Mireya, and not my business name or my entity? Well, remember, this is about personal branding, and a personal brand is, well, it's personal. So say your name, because your personal brand will be directly connected to your name. So we're going to talk about branding associated with your name directly. So which leads me to point number 1, brand identity. Just like organizations seek to differentiate their product or services through strategic marketing approaches, deliberate communication plans, or PR campaigns, when we think about our own personal brand, we need to focus on not just what we want to communicate, but how we're going to communicate it. Let's begin with the what. What are we communicating? If I asked you to Google your name, what would show up? Would a search result be your name as a member of a professional organization, perhaps, in an article that you wrote and published, perhaps as a part of a training you just gave? Or would it show up as your social media platform, or on your social media platform? And if so, what type of posts would pop up? If you've never done this little activity before, I highly encourage you to do it. Because as we unwrap what a personal brand can do for you, this step will prove to be important in determining what your first steps will be. So, in order to begin to create authenticity in brand identity, you'll want to use your real name. The AKAs are out the window. This is so important for a personal brand, because we want what we're sharing to be associated directly to our names. Another important point for the creation of brand identity is the use of a professional headshot. This is a professional picture. Just like in the previous examples of an image associated with a name, for personal branding, you want your image associated with your real name. You'll want something that you'll use over and over again. So your new image starts with well, an image, right? So we want to make sure that you're using something that is professional, or at least at the very least something that you can use over and over again, and that you can add to what we're going to get into shortly, to all the content that you're creating. Again, your name and an image. The third point to creating a brand identity is bringing your best work forward. What do I mean by that? So oftentimes what happens is that we feel that only those things that are related to our profession and what we are actually doing, in this case language professionals, should be the only work that we bring forth or that we get into, when in all actuality we should be embracing all of the work and expanding on it. So don't limit yourself. Bring all of your experiences together to create a unique brand identity. The very next thing that we want to focus on, and it's another important step in creating your personal brand, is creating your personal campaign. While there can be many things that we can consider here, you'll want to begin with practicing your personal commercial. Some of you might recognize this as the elevator speech, that 10-second commercial that defines what you do. And so some of the things that you'll want to use to help create your personal commercial are, what do people recognize your expertise in, right? You can use these terms. What are you already recognized for? Or others describe you as what, perhaps? Or what do you want to be known for? Some of you use those terms in the chat box. You want to put these words into, or phrases into, a profile table, an Excel spreadsheet. Then you want to play with the words, wordsmithing the phrases and the words until you come up with something that resonates with you. Your goal is that it rolls out of your tongue naturally when you put this commercial together, and in a way that if someone asks you, what do you do? You're able to naturally respond with those identifying keywords that really represent what you do, and that encompasses everything, not just, well, I'm an interpreter. See, some of you have used the word unique in your responses, and that doesn't quite make you unique. Although it's a beautiful profession, what we're trying to do is personalize our brand to something that really speaks about us, ourselves. Next, you're going to want to create some content. So you want to create meaningful material with the expectation that you're going to share it with others. So your content must be branded, again, with your image, with your name. You're going to want to create content with brand recognition. What does this mean? Well, you can put your expertise forward. Again, maybe it's something that you've done in the past that has worked really well for you, and you want to share that with others. You're going to want to brand that with your image, with your name. These can look like reports if you're part of an organization. If you're an employee in an organization, you can put together information that you've been collecting and presenting as reports. It could be a newsletter that you share with others, or perhaps articles or something in a PDF. What you're wanting to do here is creating personalized content. So basically, your next strategy in the creation of creating your brand campaign is going to be overhauling your social media. Okay, we want to focus on the overhaul of social media. Remember that Google search that we did earlier? If you don't already have a digital footprint, this is how you're going to begin one. You're going to want to differentiate between the social media platforms that you use for your personal reasons and then the ones that you're going to use for your personal brand. It's important that you're creating a web presence. Gone are the days of the yellow book, so no one's going to be able to look through a Rolodex or a yellow book to find you. You're going to want to begin a digital footprint with the social media overhaul. If this means awakening a dormant account, then do so. But be sure not to overextend yourself. Here you're going to want to create maybe 2 or 3 social media platforms that you are able to manage and consistently put out that content that you created. And this is going to take time. So make sure that you are very strategic in which social media platforms you want to be active on. If you have a dormant LinkedIn account, let's say, you want to wake that up and say, hey, I'm going to begin creating some content about X, Y, and Z, and you start to continuously put content on LinkedIn, or it could be Twitter. If you use Facebook for personal reasons, and personal, I'm talking about your friends and family, then keep it that way. And then create something different on a different social media platform where you're able to share your professional content and begin to create your personal brand on there. If you have a website, or perhaps a web page with your organization, this is another great tool that you can use to begin to create your personal brand. I once heard the phrase, slay the same dragon every day when referring to content sharing. So if you're going to use social media for your personal branding, continuously share the content that you create. This takes time, guys, and so consistency is really the key word. So you just want to determine what days you're going to want to put out content and what you're going to put out, and then really make the effort to do it. Our next step that we want to get into in creating a campaign is branding strategies. You want to be strategic about how you're going to use your branding. And by this, you can do strategic volunteering. This phrase I actually heard for the first time and coined by someone that was a guest on the Brand the Interpreter podcast. And she actually spoke about being very strategic to where you dedicate your time to. So if it's something that's going to help expand your skills or assist you with something that you are trying to learn, be very strategic about where you're volunteering. You can do in-person or remote workshops as another branding strategy. And in the times that we're living right now, perhaps you want to get really comfortable with the technology and nonetheless go out there and try to put out some workshops, even if it's online. You might want to sponsor events if you're not someone that really wants to work in workshops. Perhaps put together a video training and share that on whatever platform you're now utilizing. Create email lists. So if you have people that are willing and are brand ambassadors, if you will, of your brand, create email lists where you can send out emails and information that you're creating. Also, regarding email lists and information, you can also put together email campaigns. A little word of caution, though, with your email campaign is don't use a blanket email campaign when you're sending out these communications. So if you're using an email campaign to help promote your personal brand, hey, this is who I am. My name is Mireya Perez, and I am a professional remote simultaneous interpreter, or however it is you're going to phrase it. You don't want it to make it a blanket statement and send it out. And I'm going to give you an example of what happens with blanket statements. Not too long ago, I received an email through our organization from a translator, professional translator, that was seeking to associate themselves with the school district as a translator. This person did a great job at explaining the reason why they're in the business, which was, they've seen work out there, translations from K through 12 school districts that are atrocious, I believe the word was, and they also named the solution, which was themselves, the service that they provided in explaining their experience, how many years experience that they had, and how they can provide a solution to the atrocious translations. Now, the campaign in itself, although I'm doing it no justice really, because they did a great job of outlining, naming the problem, and offering a solution, the problem was their target audience. You see, I received it. And in this particular school district, there is an entire translation unit, and they sent it to the email that is associated to our unit. So it's a little bit difficult to think that they were unaware, because the email address begins with translations, right? And so what that told me on the receiving end was that they weren't really paying attention to who they were reaching out to. So knowing your audience and knowing who you're sending out your communication is so crucial, is so important, because that email went straight to the bin. Now, had they done a little bit more research and identified that our school district has an entire unit of translators, and they approached the campaign in a different way. How about something around the lines of, I'd love to be able to be that go-to translator of choice for your overflow of IEP plans, perhaps when you're inundated with IEP plans and you need something that's delivered in a specific amount of time. I'd love to be able to be that go-to person, and maybe we can talk then. Something of the sort, which differentiated the service that she was doing, and it didn't made it seem like she sent out just a blanket email campaign, right? So anyway, that was a little bit word of caution for your email campaigns. If you're creating an email campaign as part of your branding strategies, then you want to make sure that you are familiar with who your audience is. Our last component to creating a personal brand, but certainly not the least important, is building community. So what does community have to do with a personal brand? To be quite honest, this is something that is very much involved. As Mel Carson once said, the biggest misconception when it comes to personal branding is that the focus should be all about you. This is definitely not the case. You want to strike a balance between talking about yourself, but also asking questions of others. So you'll need to find a tribe in order to help you push out whatever it is that you're wanting to push out. Look for those that share a common vision, perhaps, and this doesn't necessarily need to be specifically related to T&I. This could be other components. Maybe you're building a tribe with, wanting to create a brand, or maybe you're wanting to build a tribe with marketing, or something completely different, maybe just the use of technology. Find your tribe. Look for those that have that common vision and be consistent with them. Ask the questions. This is so important. You want to create a team in your own organization to help you be your brand ambassadors. And so if you've created a personal brand within your organization and you are known for being a professional in terms of when they come to you, I know that I can rely on this person in order to walk me through the process. You want your team to be a part of that process as well. Now, if you don't have others that are similar to your role in this organization, this can be someone like an administrator, a school principal, an office manager. In another organization, it could be a secretary. Anyone that's part of your department per se, or your organization, can absolutely help you create a team. So create a team within your organization. When we started in the beginning, I mentioned that building a personal brand is not a one-man show, and I cannot emphasize this enough. I've felt that through the years, the collaboration of the work within our organization has proven to be so crucial in how far we've been able to advance everything that we've tried to create. And although things take so much time, because they do, anything that's worthwhile will take time, being able to work in collaboration has made the biggest difference than if it were only one person always singing the same tune. And then the last piece to building community is you want to become a part of a professional network, because these professional networks, ultimately what they do is they become your systems of support. It's another thing that I've learned through the years, and that I cannot emphasize enough, is even within your organization, outside of your organization, being able to make connections with others of like mind can help you to push you and your information forward. And I know, personally speaking, that there's been moments where I've questioned or I've doubted, or you'll hear me say sometimes that imposter syndrome comes in, and I want to talk myself out of certain things, and these people from outside, whether they be the professional network, are so encouraging and are always willing to push me forward and to make or help me believe in something that perhaps I feel that I'm not capable to do. And they're there just to remind me that, yes, you are capable and you can do this. So the building community aspect of your personal brand is one of the most important, if not the most important, aspects of creating a personal brand. Don't go out this or don't go at this alone, guys. Really find a tribe. Do interdepartmental collaboration. It's super important to not work alone in your organization. Really build a team and become part of a professional network. If anything else, at least so that you create some systems of support. They ultimately end up becoming your biggest cheerleaders. One of my favorite quotes that I heard in my communications program came from George Bernard Shaw, and he's quoted in saying, "The single biggest problem in communication is the illusion that it has taken place." Our communication for our personal brand needs to be consistent. And we need to create the consistency in order to evoke the engagement. You see, if we are just sending out material, just blindly sending it out, thinking, yeah, this is good stuff and people are going to eat it all up, but we're not really showing up for that engagement aspect, you're not really establishing trust for your personal brand. Let's think back at those images that we first saw. And although through the years, some of these brands don't necessarily have an association with trust, some people don't necessarily trust them anymore. Initially, this was their trajectory, was establishing trust with their consumers to the point where they become their brand ambassadors, to the point where there is loyalty to their brand. And the only way that they were able to manage this brand trust and brand loyalty was through consistency. It wasn't just a one-time thing where they sent out information and that jingle, the first part of waking up, or the just do it, or the brand association with the product, coffee with, I've yet to figure out what exactly that, if it's a mermaid or a queen mermaid, I don't know what that is, has anything to do with coffee, but yet the symbolism is so imprinted, so embedded, but that only happened with consistency. They didn't change up the image, they didn't change up the logo. It was through consistency that they were able to create brand trust. So consistency is key to your personal brand. Remember, slay the same dragon every day. Image, name, recognition. Be authentic. Find your voice. Tell your story. Remember, your personal brand is your reputation and also your legacy. Define who you are. Embrace and expand your experiences. Don't limit yourself. Identify your target audience. Craft a personal brand profile, a statement that expresses your brand. Communicate your brand, and most importantly, be consistent. Be true to yourself. Be true to your brand. People do business with people that they know, that they like, and that they trust. So be you. I'd like to thank you once again for sharing this space with me. I sincerely hope that you were able to walk away with even just a little bit of inspiration to get you started on creating your own personal brand. Obviously, the creation of a personal brand, guys, is much more than a few slides. I gave you just a little bit of taste. There is so much work just in those three little things that I shared with you today, in being able to delve a little deeper and do a little bit of work. Actually, it's a lot of of work, but it's all well worth it if you're consistent with it. What comes back to you after you're true to your own brand is unimaginable. So anyway, I hope that you're able to walk with a little bit of inspiration to get you started on your journey to creating your own personal brand. But if you need a kickstart, here's a homework assignment for you. Ready? I challenge you to create a personal branding statement and use it in the next week. And if you really want to kick it up a notch, post it on your social media platform. If you've created a personal social media platform, post it on that and tag me. That's for you A students. You know, if you really want to kick it up a notch, post that personal brand on your social media platform and tag me. You can find me on LinkedIn as Mireya Perez, Instagram, and Twitter. Thank you so very much once again, you guys. I really hope that you have an amazing rest of the week. And now I'm going to stand by for questions.
And we certainly have great questions for you. We also have countless thank yous. Someone, Mireya, who wrote "challenge accepted," and
Love it.
and comments such as remarking on your insight. So clearly, we have a very grateful audience. And a question that we got several times, by the way, that I can answer is, because I already asked you, is if you were sharing your presentation, and I'm delighted to report everyone that Mireya has already graciously given us permission to do so. So when we send out the recording, which will be within 48 hours, you will also receive the link to the presentation itself. So there are many other questions, and they are more substantive questions. So without further ado, and I'll make myself visible as well. Pablo is asking, hi Mireya, how would you, when you're a full-time translator and interpreter, respond to colleagues who want to make your personal brand look bad, or if they want to copy your personal branding? That seemed like an unusual question. Do you get that question?
Well, I think that sometimes when we will get that in terms of feeling like, hey, that kind of looks like what I did or what I just put out. But remember, it's about loyalty to your own brand first in order to create trust. So to that, I would say you stay true to your brand. You stay true to who you are, because that person might send something out, but not have the brand loyalty for themselves, for their own brand, and ultimately die off. And your brand is the one that'll stick. So I would say you keep pushing forward.
Yeah, I couldn't possibly agree with you more, by the way, Mireya. And there's a Danish Gruk, a small poem written by an author called Pete Hine, who says, "He who aims to keep abreast is forever second best." It's your brand,
Yeah.
own it. And as you
You own
say,
it.
that's what will stick.
I love that.
Yeah. Um, what, ask someone else, what if you want to keep your internet identity to a minimum? How then do you brand yourself these days? That's a tough question.
Yeah, and you know, I totally feel you, you know, particularly with everything that's going on and in the world that we live today, excuse me, we often feel like, you know, we are online all day, every day, whether it be personal or professional. But to that, I say, do limit yourself, but choose one platform that you're going to be true, that's going to be true to your personal brand. Ultimately, you might consider expanding just depending on where your brand is going. If you want to just do a professional email, let's just say, and by professional email, guys, I really encourage you to put something together that is not, you know, whatever you created back in whenever it was when all these emails started, you know, no hot bunny or no pink bunny, or, you know, really creating a personal brand or an email address that's associated to your professional brand. And so if you just want to start with email campaigns because that's currently what you're most comfortable with, then by all means. But you are trying to create a digital presence. And so by digital presence, that means you have to be online somehow, because if someone Googles your name, you want that uniqueness, whatever that may be, to pop up first. And in order to create that digital footprint, you have to be online. And so I really encourage you that you choose, even if it's just one platform. Actually, it's highly recommended that you have no more than two, because what you're really trying to create is engagement. You're not just looking into pushing out content. You want to create that engagement. And if you have to engage, then you have to find the time and have the time to engage, right?
Absolutely. Again, I couldn't possibly agree with you more. Someone is asking, what do you mean by a professional image associated with a name web search? And Michelle goes on to ask, a headshot of me or a logo? I think you had more in mind, didn't you, Medea?
Yeah, you know, a logo ultimately would be ideal, but we're not all going to jump into creating a logo necessarily, particularly when there is no image that pops up when somebody hears your name. And so just like in the examples at the beginning of the presentation, just by a simple image, we remembered the logo name and we remembered the logo tagline. And so if your image pops up somewhere, and by image, I mean your professional headshot, you do want to put together, take a picture, and doesn't have to be, you know, someone necessarily spending hundreds of dollars just to create a professional headshot. Nowadays, thank goodness, with all the filters and you know, the iPhones having the I think it's called a feature is called portrait mode. Someone can hold a camera to you and you can create a beautiful image of yourself that you can use continuously. You can put this in your email campaigns. You can post this as, you know, your profile image for whatever social media platform you want to use. But what we're trying to create here is consistency. So whether they see your name, they can picture who you are, or if they see your image, they know your name. And you are going to be the go-to person for whatever it is that you're creating, you know, your brand to be. So that's what I meant by a professional picture. You want a professional headshot. And if you get to the point of creating a logo, then yes, by all means, that's really where you're wanting to go.
Thank you, Mireya. Um, Mireya, do you recommend, asks Babel, having two social media accounts, let's say for Facebook, one for your personal brand and one personal? He says, I'm starting to separate both.
Yes, that's definitely what I recommend. Separate both by all means. I once heard someone else say, a marketer, mention the fact that even though people find her because you are using your name as your professional personal brand, people find her on Facebook, but she utilizes Facebook only for friends and family. So she declines any requests that come through that are on the professional side. So if it's anyone in the business side that wants to connect with her on that platform, because it's only for personal use, she does not mix the two. So I would highly encourage you to create, if you use Facebook as a personal, not personal brand, personal just for friends and family, stick with it and create something different. There's so many other social media platforms that you can adopt as your professional platform, where you can have at it with all the professional posts that you'd like to create. But for sure, differentiate between the two.
Thank you. Um, so I'll ask, how to avoid making yourself a product and the idea of selling yourself. And I have a hard time thinking of myself this way, Saul asks.
Yeah, I think that's a common theme, Sol, for many of us. We tend to have a hard time speaking about ourselves. So now thinking about, you know, how to sell ourselves or how to sell ourselves as product, like that in itself is scary, right? Because that it feels like you have to talk about yourself. But in all actuality, what you're doing is if you think of it as giving something away for someone that really needs it, when you think of what it is you're doing, or the service that you're providing, as a sense of help, that somebody somewhere out there also went through the difficulties or is going through the difficulties that you already went through, and you have a set of strategies or something that you can implement and share out so that they can use. I tend to see that it's easier to put some content out as opposed to it's all about me and, you know, this is why you should choose me or pick me. Identify a problem and then offer a solution. You pose yourself as a guide and your audience is the superhero. So they're looking for you just for guidance. They're not looking for you as being their superhero. And when you look at it from that angle, then you know that what you're giving away is really ultimately to teach rather than to brag.
Thank you again. Interesting one here. Mireya from Al. Mireya, do you recommend hiring a web designer? Any pointers about going that route or how to do it?
You know, part of the reason why I'm like so in love with this world that we're living in today in terms of everything that is being offered right now on the digital aspect, on the digital side, it has everything to do with being consumer friendly and, you know, down from the books to, you know, how to do this for dummies, you know, like to even the creation of websites. And so there are so many, just Google, you know, making or creating your own website and you'll see all the different names that pop up from individuals that have put together web design, making it simple for you to use to the point where you can just drag and drop how you want the layout of your website to be. So one of the important things that we want to start with is beginning with the zero budget. We want to be able to spend the least amount of money possible and creating our personal brand. So if you don't have the money in the budget to, even though I got to say that, you know, if you look for it, you will find something that is probably just as affordable as your Netflix account. But if you don't have the money for that reserved for your own personal brand, then start with a social media platform. You can use that as a website per se until you get to the point where you're comfortable enough to creating your own actual website. Because with the website, then remember, then you want to get into the logo making, and then, you know, that costs more money. But the more engagement that you begin to see on your social media platforms, that will be kind of like your guiding post. I think it's time that I create a web page because people are coming to me directly and I'm missing these, you know, these posts or these emails. But start with the zero budget, start with nothing, and social media platforms are free.
Super, thanks. Linda's asking this. I had a bad start, she says, with LinkedIn way back when. I never could figure out how to use it properly. I tend to use Facebook for both personal and professional contacts. If I were to take another stab at LinkedIn, would it make sense to go back in time and repost articles I've written in the past to this new audience?
Absolutely. The short answer to that is absolutely, because particularly if you recognize the fact that you had a difficult time, and I got to say that LinkedIn has come up in a different way. They've changed their algorithms completely. It really is a professional networking site. And so you really want to dabble with it once again. And by all means, yes, recycle your information. You know, you never know who is looking. I've got stuff that was created way back when that barely people are beginning to see and engage on. So in the digital sense, it's never old. It's never something that you want to archive because you never know who's coming on board last. And the more you create your personal brand and you talk about your brand and people search you, that old article might be what brings them forward to you. So I would say absolutely take another dab at it, get creative with LinkedIn. It's an excellent professional platform where you can socially engage with other professionals.
Super, thanks. This one may interest you as a staff interpreter and yourself. Pablo asks, Mireya, how can staff translators and interpreters develop their personal brand in the organization or company?
That's an excellent question. You know, and this came about actually unintentionally, but a lot of you used the descriptors of being professional. You want to be known as a professional, and everything that I do outside of my organization, I bring into the organization, including the professionalism. Absolutely. You know, just because they're colleagues, you know, you don't want you want to get personal in that sense of, you know, talking to them in a personal sense and joking around. And while that's great, you want to make them feel like it's still a service. So you can create a personal brand just by them recognizing if they say, oh, go to Pablo. You want that name to be associated with what? And so you have to hold yourself to that standard. Your personal brand will go whether or not you work in an organization or it's outside of your organization, it will follow you. So if someone says, go to Pablo and ask Pablo for that, the response should be is like, oh yeah, I'm going to ask Pablo. Pablo, he's such a professional, and you know, he always responds on time. Anything that you want followed outside of your organization, bring that forward to your organization, and you'll see how they both go hand in hand.
Okay, here's a bigger question, Mireya, very relevant to you. I was part of the translations department. This is an anonymous attendee. I was part of the translations department at a unified school district attached to the ESOL intake office. It was a great experience within the department. It was very difficult to educate the directors of the department and to have them know that we were professionals and that we were part of communication. How can this be done?
I feel you, Anonymous. I totally feel you. And you know what? It's really, we can have a whole different webinar on that subject, but what we're trying to do is create, or rather change, a company culture. And that doesn't happen by just going in and stating this is how it is and how it should be, and then everybody follows suit. It does take a lot of work to create company culture. And if company culture sees the bilingual employee as the interpreter, and that's been the company culture for years, you know, it's not just about one person coming in and trying to change that mentality. And so from personal experience, I can tell you that it wasn't about, we tried the approach of telling, right, how it should be, and that didn't work for us either. And I can tell you that it's still something that we continuously work towards. But what did change the mentality, and has been changing very slowly, but it's changing, is how we approach our work, in the way that we do our work. We no longer said, we now acted as such. And so Pablo earlier asked about the personal branding within the organization. We acted as professionals. We differentiated the work that we did in the way that we did it, so that people could see the difference. We didn't need to tell them the difference. They were seeing the difference. And remember when I talked about creating a team culture as well? This makes a big difference, because if you're not all on the same page, then it's just a style of work as opposed to a standard of work. And so when you have a team that says, you know, this is the way it's done, and this is the way that it should be, and let me show you the difference, then you create change little by little, because then you become, what you have and you establish are those brand ambassadors. Remember that I mentioned you've got someone that comes in and says, oh, are you a trained interpreter? Oh, oh, did we call one of our district interpreters to come in and assist? Because they begin to see the difference. So I would definitely say, listen, just like your personal brand is going to take time, that brand within your organization, you're going up against the company culture. That's going to take a lot of time as well. But consistency and team building is definitely two of the most important components for that approach.
Super. We have time for one more question, short but interesting. Do I need to copyright the brand or image? And probably the person means trademark, because I know that confusion. So let's say trademark the brand or image.
Eventually, absolutely, unless, you are, doesn't really, you're not really sure about your logo, if that's what you're referring to is your particular logo. If that's something that you're going to stick with, then I would say, you keep working on it. Personal brand evolves just like we evolve, guys. And so at this point, if you play with something and you're getting ready to start, that trademarking deal is a long process and it's going to cost you money. So remember, we want to begin with zero budget. We want to begin with nothing that's necessarily going to cost us, because we're trying to establish this personal brand. Now, if you've gotten past that point where you have enough engagement to your brand and you're ready to dive into your logo and your fonts and what the color scheme that's going to represent your brand, then yes, by all means, I would absolutely say, if you're certain of what your logo is, trademark it. You don't want what happened to what Pablo was asking earlier with regards to, someone took my idea.
Yeah, it's exactly that. When you fear that someone is going to take the name that is associated with your brand, it's almost more the name that is the value that can be taken and associated with someone else's brand. Because Mireya is right, it's money,
Yeah.
and it's time, and there's a process to that. So you don't do it lightly until
Right.
you've listened to Mireya's very excellent advice, and we've had many comments as we close. And thank you for this, Mireya. It is an astounding presentation on so many levels. It's really something very, very special that you do. And it has been recognized today. Someone who's writing, "Oh, Mireya is absolutely a wonderful presenter. Her voice and delivery are exquisite," which I thought was very cute. And the word insightful has come up as well. And many, many, many thanks. And far more questions, of course, than we could attend to. So while as always, this is a CCC tradition, Mireya, as I was explaining to you earlier, I do stay on to answer questions about, whether it's CUs for this program, and I'm going to introduce in a minute the next three webinars in this series, and if you want to know how to get the recordings and so on, or anything to do with our programs, we are now going to thank Mireya profusely for her very gracious and superbly, I like that word, insightful, webinar that is unique among webinars that I have so far seen, and hope that everyone carries it away. And when you get the link to the recording, you'll get the link to her presentation. I urge you to go back and look at certain points and to accept her challenge as well.
Accept my challenge. I expect that, A students.
So,
Once again, Marjorie, it's been a privilege and a pleasure, and I am so very grateful for the opportunity. I am grateful for everyone that attended, and I really do hope that you were able to take away at least one thing to work on for your personal brand. Thank you so much.
thank you so much, Mireya. Have a wonderful rest of your day, which is 3
You-
hours longer than ours because
Yeah.
you're in California.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Take care. For those of you who are new to our webinar series, once again, I'm Marjorie Bancroft, the founder and director of Cross-Cultural Communications. And as is traditional in this webinar series, I do stay on to answer your questions. And also I'm going to start questions about the series, about us and our programs, about anything to do with your CUs or anything. I'm right here. So the next webinar 2 weeks from today at the same time is a webinar on the right setup for remote interpreting, and it's a super special presenter from the UK, Maha Medwali, who's a member of IEC. For those of you who don't know IEC, it's the leading professional association in the world for conference interpreters, for interpreters generally, for that matter. 2 weeks after that, on October 7th, October 7th, there'll be a webinar again at the same time, the same day, Wednesday, on online dispute resolution for legal interpreters. This is not courtroom interpreting. This is like mediation and arbitration. There's a lot of interpreting that goes on in these areas outside the courtroom, and right now it's gone online. So if you don't know about alternative dispute resolution, that's ADR. That's what they call it when it's face-to-face in person. When it's online, it's called ODR, online dispute resolution. We have two presenters, a lawyer who is specialized in ADR and ODR, and a licensed a bilingual mediator who's also a court certified interpreter in the courts of Georgia, who'll be presenting then. And 3 weeks after that, and the reason it's a 3-week hiatus going to October 28th is not to interfere with the American Translators Association online conference. We'll have one at last on immigration interpreting. We've had a lot of requests to do a webinar on remote interpreting in immigration and immigration interpreting generally. So those are the next ones in the series. Apart from that, I don't know if any, actually, you know, I don't see any questions for me. It's interesting. And I'm happy to stay, but if there are no questions for me on this, and I am not seeing any. All right. All right, well, in that case, I too will bid you a fond farewell, and with thanks for your thanks. We certainly get great appreciation. Once again, within 48 hours, you will get by the same email that you registered, the link to the recording, the link to your certificate for attending, which spells out the CEUs, and the link to the PDF of the PowerPoint for this presentation. Thank you for attending, and we look forward to seeing many of you 2 weeks from today, same time, same day of the week. Take care. Have a wonderful week, everyone. And bye for now.